perimeter around the southern city of Busan, UN forces under General Douglas MacArthur made an amphibious assault on the port of Incheon in North Korea. United Nations ground forces headed north, pushing the stunned North Korean forces before them. Air power played a crucial part in the conflict. US B-29 strategic bombers pounded North Korean troops, railroads and factories. Communist leader Kim Sung pleaded with Stalin for help against the relentless air attacks. Stalin secretly sent a unit of MiG-15s commanded by the top-scoring Soviet ace of World War II, Ivan Kozydub. The MiGs were shipped to China, then based in Antung, near the border with North Korea. In October 1951, MiG-15s decimated a force of 8 B-29s. 3 of the huge bombers were shot down, and the rest were heavily damaged. The B-29s were restricted from daylight operations, while the call for help went out. The MiG-15s were by far the most capable fighters in the sky, but soon US F-86A Sabre fighter jets were deployed to counter the MiG threat. The F-86 proved a match for the MiGs and eventually achieved a 10-to-1 kill ratio by the end of the war. Its success over the MiG-15 is still a matter of debate, but Soviet pilots did score an impressive amount of victories in the skies over North Korea. Nikolai V. Sutyagin downed 22 US aircraft, making him the top-scoring Soviet ace. Yevgeny G. Pepelyov shot down 19 aircraft, including 14 F-86s, during the conflict. Back at Sagi, the Soviet Union's leading aeronautical research center, aircraft development continued during the heady atmosphere of the 1950s. Researchers looked for ways to improve the MiG-15. They conducted wind tunnel tests to investigate swept angle designs and the use of wing fences to improve boundary layer performance. The result was a new aircraft delivered in October 1952. The MiG-17, like the MiG-15, appeared in many different versions. The radar-equipped MiG-17PF became the standard interceptor of the Soviet Air Force. The MiG-17 PFU became the first operational aircraft equipped with air-to-air beam-riding missiles. A radar aiming sight was installed on the top of the engine inlet. The race for a supersonic fighter led Mikoyan designers to increase the MiG-17's wing angle to 55-degree sweep. This allowed for a faster, more powerful aircraft known as the MiG-19. The new aircraft was outfitted with the RD-9B engine, which had 25% more thrust than its predecessor. In early 1954, a MiG-19 reached Mach 1.33, unofficially breaking the world's speed record. But it wasn't claimed, in the interests of secrecy. At the time, the Soviet Union stretched from Europe to the Pacific Ocean. There were not enough airfields to protect the vast country. A rocket-assisted version of the MiG-19, the SM-30, was developed as a quick reaction fighter. The Russian solution was a truck-launched aircraft that could be recovered anywhere. The MiG-19 was rugged enough to land in fields after completing its mission. At Sagi, researchers discovered the delta-type wing produced much less drag than swept or straight wings. They also found that the thinner a wing is relative to its width, the less drag it produces. Experiments with the MiG-15 and 17 had demonstrated the benefits of an engine installed inside the fuselage with a nose intake. These were subsonic aircraft, however, and as speeds increased through the transonic zone, it became necessary to slow down incoming air with a cone-shaped inlet spike. The result of this research was the MiG-21, another major achievement for Mikoyan and Gurevich. The performance of the aircraft was so outstanding that for the first time the Soviets decided to claim official world speed records. The value of propaganda overwhelmed that of official secrecy. The result was another victory for Artyom Mikoyan. On the 1st of October 1959, MiG Bureau test pilot Georgy Mosolov set the Soviet official world speed record on a closed 25-kilometer course. He was clocked at 2,388 kilometers per hour. The Cold War climate during this era stressed parity with the West. The development of supersonic fighter aircraft and the introduction of the Mach II capable MiG-21 allowed the Soviet air forces to grow and improve. Mikoyan had his success. Now his rival Alexander Yakovlev was trying not to be left behind, not just competing against the West. His first twin-engine interceptor was called the Yak-25. NATO codenamed it Flashlight. It was selected for Air Force use in May 1953. Yakovlev's next effort was a greatly improved interceptor similar to the Yak-25, but much more powerful. It had two of the Tumansky Ra-1 turbojets developed for the MiG-21. The bicycle landing gear allowed space for large weapons stored under the wings and fuselage. Serious production of the Yak-28 began in the early 1960s. It surpassed many established aircraft in speed, range and altitude capability. Continuing development and modification of the Yak-28 proved it to be a versatile aircraft capable of adjusting to many roles during the dynamics of the Cold War. In 1964, a growing escalation of American involvement in Indochina led to an inevitable collision with communist North Vietnamese forces. During that year, it was reported that North Vietnamese torpedo boats attacked a US Navy destroyer. The response was a series of bombing raids over the port of Haiphong and a massive air operation known as Rolling Thunder. On the ground, North Vietnamese ground controllers tracked American aircraft and vectored North Vietnamese MiG-17s towards them, using a classic Soviet tactic called ground control intercept. These attacks carried out over North Vietnam against the US aircraft like the F-105 were effective. The MiG-17s were considerably more maneuverable than American fighter bombers like the F-105 Thunderchief, the primary bombing aircraft of Rolling Thunder. The North Vietnamese used ambush tactics to engage the American pilots suddenly at close range with 37mm cannon fire. The Thunderchief was a well-regarded aircraft, but the MiG-17 was a pure dogfighter in the hands of a capable pilot. New tactics and increasing large assaults by North Vietnamese pilots took a serious toll on American fighter bombers. US fighter escorts firing Sidewinder missiles downed around 100 MiGs during Rolling Thunder. It didn't help the Americans that in 1966 the Soviet Union and China was aiding the fledgling North Vietnamese Air Force. Now it had the faster, more deadly MiG-21 interceptors.